All right. Hi again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our live webinar today, What Your 2022 Marketing Plan Needs to Succeed. My name is Caroline Cox. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at HawkSEM, and I will be hosting today's webinar. So I will introduce you to our amazing speakers in just a bit. Before we get started, if you have any questions during the webinar, just type them into the Q&A box that should be on the lower side of your Zoom panel, and we will address as many of these as we can after the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, so we'll share a link to the recording within the next few days if you came in late or if you want to share it with others. So I'll briefly cover who we are, we'll hop into the presentation, and then after that, we'll have a quick recap and then jump into the Q&A. So just want to cover a little bit about Hawk very quickly. We are a full service digital marketing agency. These are just some of the services we offer, everything from PPC to paid social ads to content marketing, SEO, and more. I also briefly just wanted to touch on what's different about us. Of course, there are a lot of agencies out there. First is Conversion IQ. This is our unique marketing method that ensures we're always focused on revenue and not just traffic. We don't have a separate analytics team because every account manager is a data-driven marketing scientist, is what we call them. We also only employ senior managers, so we don't have any junior marketers working on accounts. And then we're strategists who execute. So for that, that just means that we don't give you a to-do list. We come up with best practices and make them happen for you and with you. And then, of course, we focus on the human touch. So we're not about setting it and forgetting it. We're always iterating and trying to test new things for our clients. And then lastly, we have experience across a ton of different industries. So we work with companies like Thrift Books, Sierra Nevada University, Honda, and Verizon Media, among others you can see here. So with that said, I'm going to introduce our speakers. So first up, we've got Rachel Korak. She is an SEO and SEM manager here at HawkSEM. Rachel specializes in helping brands expand their reach, exceed revenue goals, and increase their return on ad spend through her expert marketing knowledge. She lives in sunny Arizona and enjoys being active and spending time with her dogs. Next up, we've got Veronica Boss. She is a lead strategist here at HawkSEM. She meshes her creative and technical skills to help clients of all stripes reach their goals through content strategy, link development, SEO, and more. She lives in Colorado and also enjoys being active and hanging out with her dog pack as well. And I know what you're thinking. It is not a requirement to be outdoorsy and have a dog to work at Hawk, but it does help, I will say. So as you can see here, I'm going to launch a quick anonymous poll just to kind of see where everyone is at in terms of your goals. The year is about over, so we're just curious about where you think you'll stack up against your marketing goals this year. Do you think you're going to meet them, not meet them, exceed them, or did you not set any goals at all? And of course, no wrong answer here. And it is anonymous, so I'm going to give people a few more seconds, and then I will share the results. All right, a lot of participation. Few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So it looks like we have a good mix. And again, no wrong answer here. So that's great to know. Okay, let's see. To kick things off, I'm also going to share what I think is an interesting stat. So in a recent survey of more than 1,000 global marketing pros, 84% said their businesses will continue to invest the same or more amount of money into their SEO tactics in 2022. So I think that's really interesting. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our speakers.
Right. Thanks, Caroline. And hi, everyone. And thanks for joining today. I'm Rachel. And to help you plan for an awesome 2022 marketing plan, Veronica and I recommend planning things out in a 3-phase approach with before, during, and after stages. We're going to walk through these stages step by step and give you some great ideas to leverage while mixing in plenty of tips and tricks for you to try in the year ahead. I know we're all excited to get started, so let's jump right into the first stage and talk about setting goals and historical data. All right, so one of the most important first steps is establishing your goals. What do you want to achieve? Is it brand awareness? Maybe you need more traffic, or maybe you need to hit certain revenue goals. Maybe your answer is all of the above, and that's great. You just need to know how to properly measure your KPIs in order to achieve these goals and set your expectations accordingly. For example, if you want to generate a ton of brand awareness, it doesn't always make sense to look at revenue as your singular metric of success. It's natural for upper funnel campaigns to deliver different results than lower funnel campaigns, and this is totally okay. The important part is understanding the value of each step along the way and then knowing how to see the larger picture. The next item we're going to talk about is historical data. The one thing that we know about history is it teaches us lessons, right? So you want to utilize that principle to plan a strong marketing strategy. You can prepare yourself by gathering the information available to you and by knowing where you can access your data sources. Here at Hawk, we're Google enthusiasts, so we recommend starting with Google Analytics and other sources like Search Console. If you don't have those implemented yet, you can use tools like your CRM or your OMS. The idea is that you want to use these resources to help identify trends during the actual planning stage. So with that said, let's jump into the next phase. Okay, so once you have all your historic data ready to go, you're going to use this to plan for seasonality. And there are ways you can leverage this from both a paid and an organic perspective. Anyone who works in paid knows that not all quarters are created equally, and a common mistake is to disperse budgets evenly throughout the year. Paid budgets should not be linear, however. We should be allocating more spend to months that historically drive greater revenue volume, and then pull back on months that are on the slower side. With that said, we should also be utilizing our historical data to identify the causes of revenue fluctuations and then build counter strategies to exceed revenue in the year ahead. An example of this would be identifying things like promotions that were launched to ensure they're matched next year. Shifting gears slightly, while paid budgets don't directly impact SEO, seasonality definitely does. So Veronica, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as with paid search and social, measuring month-over-month organic traffic growth is important, but year-over-year metrics are equally important because it allows us to look at that seasonality. So if traffic is up in November from October, say, or any given 2 months, when the previous year we saw a decline during that period, we know that our results were strong enough to beat out that downward seasonality trend. And that's a really strong point to make during reporting. A similar strategy I use when month-over-month traffic is down, and we saw that same trend last year. Well, we can partially justify that decline because we saw that seasonality trend last year as well.
Awesome. So after you're done taking a look at your historical data, the next step is to avoid siloing yourself into just one channel and instead leverage a multi-channel approach by minimally incorporating paid search, SEO, and paid social into your strategy. You'll want to see the forest for the trees when it comes to marketing and understand the value of the different channels because each channel provides unique targeting opportunities. And these opportunities allow us to get in front of the user at varying points in the customer journey. Understanding how to leverage different channels and how they support one another is key to your success. For example, there's a snowball effect with SEO. The more traffic you get from channels like PPC, the more it helps boost your organic rankings. With that said, I'm going to pass it over to Veronica so she can walk us through some tips on SEO, and then we'll cover opportunities for paid search and paid social before jumping into the third phase.
Great. So there are 3 key pillars to organic search success. We've got on-site SEO, where we're really focusing on content, keyword placement, and clean site architecture. And then there's technical, which we know there are over 100 different technical elements to check for during that auditing process. And then offsite SEO, so think backlinks, Google Business Profile Management, citation management, and so on. So let's start with on-site SEO. When optimizing web pages on your site, there are several things to prioritize. We are, of course, taking a look at that metadata, so the title tag and the meta description. We want to ensure that they fall into that recommended character count. We don't want to see any of our results truncated in search. We also want to ensure that our primary keyword is in our title tag, as well as our meta description, along with other keywords that will fit, and a call to action to inspire that click through. Taking a look at headings and body copy, this is the content that's on your actual landing page. So again, you want to insert your keywords here. The key is to do it naturally. The primary keyword should be in your heading tag, and your other heading tags should contain keywords as well, whether they're secondary keywords or variations of your primary keyword. And then the body copy is where you really want to do your keyword insertion naturally. You want to avoid that keyword stuffing. And I mean, honestly, just talking about the keywords and talking about the topics that you want to target is often enough to do it naturally. And then the URL structure, of course, we want to avoid any jargon or numbers or really anything in there that is not just a basic keyword that describes the page. And then images, of course, we want to ensure that our file sizes of them are small enough to not impact the load speed, but large enough that we're not impacting the quality of those images. And then each image should also have that alt text, which should just be a keyword phrase that describes the image. And then, of course, you want to have at least one call to action on every page. Next, let's talk technical SEO. There are over 100 different technical SEO elements we check for during our audit. These elements range from highly technical stuff like page load speed and redirect issues, maybe past site migration issues that we've dug up, to issues that are a bit simpler to fix, like duplicate content, internal linking, structured data, sitemaps, the list goes on. Captured here are some of the most important technical SEO elements that we analyze. Next, we're going to dig into offsite SEO. Offsite SEO, also called off-page SEO, refers to any action taken outside of your own website to impact your search rankings. So this is work completed not on your web pages, but on various sites across the web pointing back to you. The first strategy we're going to discuss is citation management, an offsite SEO strategy that can really benefit local SEO campaigns. A citation is a mention of your brand name, address, and or phone number on a website that isn't your own. So a good example of this would be a Yellow Page listing, Yelp listing, even your Facebook page. Aside from having the largest number of citations you can, the goal here is to ensure name, address, phone number consistency across all citations. This is also known as NAP consistency. If you were to change your brand name, your phone number, or your address, the citations across the web would then conflict with the contact information on your website and your social pages. NAP consistency is a known SEO ranking factor, so the first step of citation management is auditing for those NAP inconsistencies and correcting them. Then you're going to want to build new citations on any platforms where they might be missing. One tool that we love to use for this is BrightLocal. BrightLocal has a free citation auditing and a free citation building tool. So if you've got a little bit of time to spend on your citation management, you've got some boots on the ground work to do with BrightLocal because it is a free tool. Paid tools like Moz and Rio SEO do a great job too, and they're far less manual. So good alternatives if you don't need to be as cost efficient. Another offsite SEO tool we love is Google My Business, soon to be Google Business Profile. Listings should be set up in Google Business Profile for all clients with physical locations, and so should Bing Places. And you might be thinking, Bing, really? That seems like an outdated search engine. How many people are really using Bing? Well, because you can import your Google Business Profile info directly into Bing Places with the touch of a button, there's really no reason not to do it. And we are still seeing some traffic come through in Bing, especially in those older demographics. Next, I'm going to dig into backlinks. Backlinks are links on websites across the web that point back to your site. Google views these links as a vote of confidence for your website. So the more of them that you have, Google starts to deem your site as important because you have all these votes of confidence. Backlinks have always been a crucial aspect of SEO strategy, but it used to be a lot easier to manipulate Google and other search engines with black hat link development. In other words, spammy link practices than it is today, because Google has released several updates to downgrade these websites who participate in spammy link networks. Google Penguin was a big one back in 2012. In July of this year, Google just released its latest link spam update. This algorithm update is even more effective at identifying that link spam, even across multiple languages. So finally, what is a quality backlink? A quality backlink is a link that comes from a website that is well trusted by search engines and searchers alike. In other words, not only do the robots crawling the website trust it, but actual people visiting it trust it as well. The more trustworthy a website is and the higher its domain authority, the better quality a link is considered. So let's talk about domain authority quickly, also known as DA. DA is a metric created by Moz and is commonly referred to in the industry to help web developers and SEO deem the quality of a website. The Moz website and tool suite does require a paid membership, but Moz has a toolbar. It's a free Chrome extension, and it allows you to access this DA metric with no cost. When developing these backlinks, what are our placement priorities? Well, we're searching for websites that are highly relevant with sufficient domain authority, of course, but we also prospect a variety of site types, and we aim to develop links with varying anchor text. These are key steps in having that naturally appearing backlink profile. Our link development process includes research and prospecting quality link placements, followed by outreach to website owners or editors, suggesting that a link to a client's webpage be added as a resource to their users. In many cases, this outreach method is simply an email or sometimes even a Facebook message. All right, let's talk about some of our favorite SEO tools. Google Search Console is a big one here. To quickly name a few valuable tools in GSC, I would definitely recommend the sitemap submission tool. This allows us to request a full site recrawl. So if I make big changes to anything, site architecture, URL structure especially, but anything that's happening to a good set of pages, I will request a recrawl. The individual URL inspection tool is great too. It allows you to request individual URLs be indexed. You can also see the last time the page was crawled and why it isn't indexed, if it's included in a sitemap anywhere. Lots of good info. The performance report is another one of my favorite places to be in Google Search Console. You can get click and impression, average position data for your entire site or broken down by keyword or landing page. It's a really great tool for reporting. And then, of course, last but not least, that page experience report where you can check out your core web vitals like page speed and load stability. You can audit mobile usability, and you can check for any site security issues. Screaming Frog is the crawling tool that we use, but there's a handful of other good ones. Deep Crawl is one that I would recommend too. In Screaming Frog, there are so many great tips to share and tools to use. We could do a whole separate webinar on Screaming Frog alone, and we might. But there are two quick tips that I want to leave with you all. So first, use the API connectors. You can connect your crawler to GA, Search Console, Page Speed Insights, Ahrefs to quickly crawl traffic, page speed, and backlink data for each individual URL on your site. And then, of course, adjust your spider configuration settings to only crawl what you need. So this is going to save time and RAM. If you only need to crawl metadata for each page, no reason to go in and crawl JavaScript and CSS and images. If you only need to crawl images, no need to crawl. So just select what you need and don't crawl the entire site every time. For that first technical audit, of course, you're likely going to want to check all of the items, but in most cases, it's just not necessary. And then real quick, just wanted to mention a couple Chrome plugins that we like to use. So SEO Minion and Wapalizer just allow us to get some info that would require us to go into the source code. And then just some keyword research tools are listed there as well. All in all, success in organic search starts with strategy, followed by technical and on-page optimizations, later amplified with offsite SEO strategies and social or paid promotion. So moving away from organic search, I'm going to hand things off to Rachel so she can discuss some of those strategies for paid channels.
Awesome. Thanks, Veronica. Okay, so we're going to shift gears now and take a look at paid channels. To start, we're going to dive into search engine marketing, or SEM or SEM. This covers the ad types that you find on the search engines like Google or Bing. SEM is a veil that covers a number of ad formats like search, shopping, display, and even YouTube. With the right approach, you can get in front of the audiences you want using any one of these ad formats. And I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can use each of these in different ways, plus discuss some new things that are coming down the pipe in the paid world. So the first ad format we want to cover is paid search, which, as most of you know, is the most classic ad format on the SERP, and it utilizes keyword bidding. The benefit of paid search versus organic is that it allows you to show up for the searches you want, when you want, without the weight of earning those organic search rankings. Something that's really important to consider with Google search right now is the course that it's headed toward fully automated bidding and the sunsetting of older ways of advertising. Starting next year, expanded text ads are going away, and advertisers will be required to adopt responsive search ads on Google instead. As most of you probably know, responsive ads allow for multiple variations of headlines and descriptions, and thereby allow many different variations through a singular ad. Because the more traditional text ads are going away, advertisers who implement the responsive ads now are definitely going to be a step ahead. In a webinar that was presented by Google last month, it was explained that the future of paid search is heading in a direction away from traditional exact keyword bidding, and that instead we should be anticipating a search landscape that's more focused on semantics. How this plays into the change occurring with responsive ads is that rather than building responsive ads that are exact keyword focused, we should begin building ad copy that includes semantically related terms instead. One of the biggest takeaways here in the spirit of incorporating multi-channel strategies is that the future of paid search is going to closely resemble the way Google interprets organic content, which these days is based on semantics. With that in mind, it's never been more important to be sending your paid traffic to SEO optimized landing pages to allow those channels to support one another. Google is going to be paying more attention than ever to the quality of landing page content as it works to understand which ads are actually the most relevant to provide the best user experience. It will benefit paid search managers to incorporate SEO keyword tools into their strategy when building ad text. Tools like SEMrush or Moz that Veronica talked about will provide a lot of value in helping you craft ad copy that's based on semantically related terms versus exact keywords, which are, as we know, becoming a thing of the past. There's definitely a lot to think about in this regard, but we're seeing a lot of trends with paid channels incorporating these organic elements. And so with that said, the channel that we're going to take a look at is shopping. All right, so in the spirit of multi-channel strategies, shopping fits perfectly into this world now, acting as both a paid and organic channel through shopping ads and free listings. Feed attributes like your product titles and descriptions have always impacted search for shopping, but incorporating an organic strategy into these feed optimizations has an even greater impact now than before, since these are now big indicators for serving in free listings. To add to this list of new organic elements within shopping, there's also a new beta at Merchant Center that's called the Competitive Visibility Report, which helps you compare visibility across not only shopping ads, but also free listings. The report shows you how you stack up against competitors in the shopping space and also who they are, which is a super cool feature to see. You can view KPIs like relative visibility and page overlap rate and higher position rate. It's really interesting because with so many new organic features, it seems clear Google is trying to incorporate more of a multi-channel approach in their platforms, just like we should be doing in our strategy as well. So that said, I'm going to quickly discuss ways you can leverage YouTube and display, and then we'll take a look at paid social. Okay, so it comes as a surprise to some folks that YouTube is considered a paid search channel, but yes, YouTube ads are built and managed directly in Google Ads. There's a number of ad formats ranging from skippable to non-skippable to bumper ads and overlays. Ultimately, YouTube is a really good option for capturing upper funnel and/or in-market audiences. There is the caveat that not all brands have resources to create video content, but minimally, you can still test overlay placements with simple images or text. Something really cool about YouTube in the spirit of multi-channel approaches is how, aside from running ads on YouTube, you can also leverage it to boost your SEO. You can use the keyword research tools that Veronica shared to optimize your video titles and descriptions for organic search on YouTube. And then from there, you can layer in ad targeting that's based on people who have previously searched your keywords when you run YouTube ads, and ultimately allow all of the channels to work together in harmony. YouTube is a great example of a channel we'd recommend incorporating into a multi-channel strategy, and we also recommend reporting based on full attribution versus last click. Display is another channel where this comes into play, so we'll take a look at that before jumping into paid social, and then afterward we'll talk about tracking and some different ways you can look at reporting with that full attribution in mind. So display allows you to target huge ranges of people. It has really cheap CPCs and it can be a great upper funnel option. As most of us know, display catches a bad rap because it has notoriously low conversion rates, especially for e-commerce, but there are ways that you can use it well, and there are industries it actually works well for, like dating and personals. While that happens to be the only industry on display with CPCs over $1, it also happens to have the highest conversion rate of any industry on the network. Legal, consumer services, and auto industries also have above average conversion rates in display. So if that's your area, it could be great for you. Some things you can try to improve display performance would be testing your landing page experience. There's some data that supports that you can actually increase your conversion rates in display by having video content on your landing pages. Also, leveraging display as a remarketing channel historically drives better results as well. One of our favorite methods in this spirit of a multi-channel approach is using Google Display to retarget users from traffic sources outside of Google, like your social media channels. So with that in mind, let's jump into social media and talk about some things we can do there.
All right, thanks, Rachel. This is Caroline popping back in really quick. And I do see some questions coming in, which is awesome. So again, we will get to those in the end, so keep those coming. I just wanted to share this optimistic stat for you guys. So US ad spending is projected to maintain 12% growth in 2022, surpassing 300 billion with a B for the first time, with nearly all major industries returning to pre-COVID marketing investment levels. That's according to recent stats from Ad Age. And so, okay, now I'm going to go back to Rachel.
Thank you. So there are lots of paid social platforms these days, and this list is not all inclusive, but we're going to talk about a few we like best and give you some ideas on how you can leverage them while you think about incorporating them into your multi-channel approach. So each of these platforms offer different targeting opportunities. So depending on your brand, you can decide which of these you want to integrate into your marketing plan. Okay. So to kick things off, we're going to take a look at the big players in the social space, Facebook and Instagram. The advantage here is the ability to advertise on both Instagram and Facebook through one platform. So you get a little more bang for your buck in that regard. Facebook has really insane targeting options and a massive reach. So there's a lot of benefits here. They also continue to grow the platform and placements, with Reels being introduced earlier this year as a new placement. These are a great option for acquiring new reach and pairing ads with new and interesting content. Much in the way that we see changes occurring in Google, ad landscapes continue to move in the direction of being highly content focused. In that same vein, we also see ad landscapes moving in the direction of prioritizing user privacy and the world of third-party cookies starting to become obsolete. We saw major impacts from this due to the Apple iOS changes that rolled out earlier this year, impacting mobile devices, and all advertisers know how much this impacted retargeting capabilities on Facebook. As these changes continue to occur, getting ahead of it is the best way you can position yourself as an advertiser. Implementing new tracking methods that are server side are a good place to start. Rather than relying on pixels, which are browser side, you can implement tools like the Facebook Conversions API, which is server side, and this allows you to track conversions through your server versus the browser. There's similar solutions for Google as well that we'll look at later, but this is an important element that marketers should be considering as we inevitably move away from the previous ways of doing things. Shifting gears a little bit, while Facebook and Instagram are great e-commerce solutions, LinkedIn is the king of B2B. You can target based on multiple professional attributes down to the exact title of a person's role at their company. This is a really great platform for lead generation. And according to HubSpot, LinkedIn is 277% more effective at lead generation than Facebook. In our experiences, we find the most effective methods for lead gen on LinkedIn involve offering items of value when prospecting for your leads, like white papers or downloads. Another really cool way you can leverage LinkedIn when you're considering a multi-channel strategy is that because it's owned by Microsoft, you can actually use LinkedIn audience targeting for your Bing search ads. So if you do decide to test LinkedIn ads, or if you're already using them, you can maximize your efforts by implementing your audience learnings across channels. Now, even though Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn are the big players, we don't want you to forget about the other guys. While these platforms are often less used than Facebook and LinkedIn, they still offer unique value. Pinterest, for example, is now the third most popular social media site and an awesome e-commerce solution. It's a great platform to reach new audiences, especially with high incomes and people who have a high intent on shopping. Adspresso actually found that 47% of Pinterest users use the platform specifically to shop. Our primary recommendation when setting up Pinterest ads would be to utilize your high-performing keywords from SEO and paid search to leverage your multi-channel approach. Jumping around to Reddit, Quora, and Twitter, these are also great solutions, especially if your audience is male and in their 20s and 30s. If you don't use these platforms to run ads, we still recommend incorporating them into an organic strategy, because leveraging content that performs well on social organically is a great way to determine which content you may like to turn into ads later. If you do create those social ads and they perform well, you can then take it a step further by turning them into display ads or by testing your social video content on YouTube. The idea is while you're planning your marketing strategy, you want to consider how you can make a greater impact by doubling down on the things that work well, and then by utilizing all the channels to snowball your performance. So with that said, I'm going to pass it back to Caroline before we jump into the final phase.
All right, thanks, Rachel. So finally, we're going to discuss tracking and reporting two key elements in this after planning phase. But first, I'm going to launch another poll. So let me go ahead and do that. And this one is just about whether you have had tracking or conversion issues in the past. And again, these are anonymous, and we just like to know where everyone's at in terms of your experiences. So I'm going to give that a few more seconds to have people participate, and then I will show the results. Okay, looking good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this so we can go on to the next one. So it looks like, a good mix, but a lot of people have had these issues in the past, which is great because we have some solutions for you there. And then I'm going to do one more poll. And so this is about if your company has Google Analytics 4 set up, and you'll see why we're asking that in a second. But just curious there if you have it set up, if you're not sure, or if you're planning to. So I'll give everyone a little bit of time to answer that.
And Caroline, while we wait for them to answer, just a thought here. A lot of thought leaders in the industry do think that GA4 features are pretty limiting in a lot of ways. And I think most of us are preferring to just use the old GA, but Google loves to roll out new tools and then a few years later sunset the old tools. So what we're recommending is to just set up GA4 and run it simultaneously with your normal GA, just so that, should they sunset this tool, like expanded text ads are being replaced with responsive search ads, that page speed test has disappeared, and now we've got the rich results test. So if time will tell us anything, it's just you want to have that historical data in GA4 just in case.
That's great insight, Veronica. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you should be able to see the results here. It looks like a mix. Once again, a lot of people aren't sure. That's totally fine. Okay, and now I'm going to kick it back to Rachel.
All right, thank you. So moving on to tracking. In this final phase, we want to ensure your efforts are made valuable by making your results measurable. You want to ensure tracking is implemented properly on your site so you don't botch your data with silly tracking mishaps. We encourage utilizing tools like Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and Tag Assistant. We mentioned also implementing the Facebook Conversions API along with the classic Facebook Pixel. It's important now more than ever of having tracking visibility in place and to consider server-side tracking as platforms move away from third-party cookie methods. Like Veronica mentioned too, Google will likely sunset GA3 eventually, so it's a good idea to start setting up GA4 to preserve historical data. Some best practices we encourage are firing all tags and pixels out of Google Tag Manager, which should be placed in the head of the HTML. This creates a better probability of the pixels firing, and it lessens the likelihood that you'll lose tracking due to the code being buried too far down on the page. Also, placing your pixels in Tag Manager will allow you to track across multiple platforms without bogging down the website with lots of code. The more you minimize the amount of code that needs to load on a page, the better it is for your tracking, your UX, and even your SEO, since load times impact SEO performance. A few things we recommend looking out for are things like duplicate tracking scripts, which will inflate data. This can occur unintentionally from things like conflicting plugins that may be firing the same script more than once. You want to keep an eye on latency and script loading and things like forms without hidden fields that pass UTMs too. We see tracking implemented incorrectly all the time. So getting all of this in place is going to be one of the most important elements of your marketing strategy, and it'll set you up for the next item on our list, which we'll jump into now. So after you have your tracking implemented, you'll want to translate that data into meaningful reports that provide you with insights you actually need. Some of our favorite data sources are Google tools like Ads, Analytics, Search Console, and Google My Business. Wherever your data sources need to come from, we find ways to integrate that data into Google Data Studio. You can connect Data Studio directly to your analytics platforms for automated reporting, So you can pull up any reporting window you want at any given time. We also utilize Supermetrics with Data Studio, which allows us to connect with sources like Facebook and SEMrush to create really robust multi-channel reports. The last item we want to cover is this notion of considering the big picture. We've discussed ways you can leverage different channels in your marketing strategy and tools you can use for reporting. But if you lose sight of this, it can hold you back from getting the results you're after if you're not seeing the forest for the trees. By this, we mean that we encourage fellow advertisers to shift the reporting style to look at full attribution and ditch the older ways of last click. As we all know, many products and services require sizable consideration phases, and we encourage reporting that views performance more holistically. In addition, as shifts occur across platforms and devices in favor of user privacy, this is another lever you can pull to view your data with more transparency. I know that reporting on full attribution is nothing new, but what I want to share are some ways you can leverage tools like Google Analytics to access it and actually report on it. The multi-channel funnels report in Google Analytics is one way you can view this data. I especially like the top conversion paths report, which is pictured here on this slide. As you see in the example, paid search plays an important role in the user journey for this brand, but it often loses attribution due to the nature of the consideration phase. It's also worth noting that paid efforts often lead to increased organic traffic, which is also represented here, where you can see that 4 out of 10 of the organic touch points actually began with paid search. Reporting this way for our clients has provided real use cases where we've seen paid search contribute to revenue and return on ad spend that was over 300% higher than what was reported last click. Multi-channel funnel reporting can be pulled into Data Studio, and Supermetrics allows us to pull in assisted conversions by channel, so you can create some really cool reporting views. That said, if you implement this method of reporting on top of our other tips, you'll be in a great place for the year ahead.
So let's chat top takeaways from today's webinar. The first step of any marketing campaign is to establish your goals. You always want to keep focus on the big picture using multi-channel approach. If you silo yourself too far into any one channel, you're really going to limit your potential for your website success. Of course, you got to use your historical data to plan for things like seasonality and to allocate your budget wisely. Ensure your tracking is set up properly so that you can track the results of your hard work, and then use those metrics to develop insightful reports. And of course, always keep sight on the big picture, and you'll be posed for success.
All right. Thanks so much, Rachel and Veronica. That was a great conversation. Lots of great insights there. And I hope that everyone got a lot out of it. Of course, I'm going to launch one last poll. You can see the theme here, but this is the last one. So this is just whether you'd like a free, no obligation PPC or SEO analysis from Hawk. And again, no wrong answer. So, I would know we went through a lot here and not everyone has the same resources. So this is just a little something that we can offer. So I'm going to keep this running in the background and we'll jump into the Q&A really quick. We have just a few minutes left. And again, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the box. So I did see a very quick question from Zara. I know we were talking about, I think Rachel was talking about semantics earlier, and I was just wondering if you could quickly define what that is for people who may not know.
Yeah, sure. So when we're talking about semantics, especially in the way that Google interprets that, it means that rather than Google's algorithm matching content with exact keywords, they look at content now more based on meaning and the similarities in the meaning of keywords. So, for example, I work with a client that works in an off-road industry, and in certain regions of the country, they use the terminology off-road, but then in other regions of the country, they use different terminology like mud bogging. And so Google would see those two terms and understand that even though they're not an exact match keyword, they hold the same meaning. And so that's what we mean by semantically related terms.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. That makes a lot of sense. And that's good to know. So our next question is from Sarah, and she's asking, how can I find out which social platforms my target audience uses the most, or that would make most sense for my brand?
So there's a couple ways that you could look at that. For one, like we touched on how some of these platforms just sort of naturally cater more towards certain demographics. And so you could start there if you haven't been leveraging any sort of strategy yet. A different option though is if you have Google Analytics already implemented, you can actually find that data within your analytics platform. There's reports that will drill down and tell you exactly which social media channels are driving most of your website traffic. And so my recommendation would be to start there and then build off of that.
Perfect. Okay. And then we have a question. I don't know which of you wants to answer this, but Tim was asking, how often should you conduct audits on things like your SEO and PPC?
Great question. I'll answer it from an SEO standpoint if you want to tackle the PPC side, Rachel. For SEO, we do a really deep dive technical audit at first, and that's looking at, over 100 different issues, and some of them they are not reoccurring issues, so you fix them once and they don't come back. There are some issues that do kind of reoccur, so maybe broken pages or broken links, and there's a lot of issues that we check for ongoing. And so quarterly, at least, I would recommend doing what I call a technical health check. And so if you're not doing that full audit, that full deep dive, at least, running a crawl, rerunning some of your auditing tools and just making sure there aren't any glaring issues that have rearisen. And then once a year doing that deep dive again. And then Rachel, what are you thinking from a PPC standpoint? How often are you auditing?
Well, whenever we take on a new account, we do a full account audit, which is a very extensive and in-depth look at the account. And then we build our strategy based off of that. And so essentially, I think most paid search marketers know that continuously optimizing accounts and campaigns is sort of part of your day-to-day. But I would say that if something comes up where we were seeing major fluctuations in performance, that's the time when I would say that we should dive into the account and try to figure out, more in depth what's going on, if there aren't any obvious answers jumping out from our analytics platforms.
Good to know. Good to know. Okay, great. I'll give everyone a few more minutes back in their day. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And again, we'll be sending out that recording within the next few days. So keep an eye on your inbox. And remember, you can request an audit from Hawk anytime by going to hawksem.com/webinar-audit-request. And with that, we'll see you next time. And we hope you have a great rest of your week.